Good afternoon, people. Very nice that you joined for this next webinar on, let's say, cloud versus on-premise for Dynamics NAV. And we have today Rick Blom and Maarten Pauwels from the Netherlands, from EasyStep2, sorry, telling us their experience with cloud and comparing to an on-premise setup of Dynamics NAV. Before we start, of course, a small introduction to Rick and Maarten. Rick has been in the Dynamics world for a long time already, I think even longer than I am, going around a lot there and also moving into other areas of IT, bringing in a lot of experience on, let's say, functional but also technical side. He and Maarten joined hands some times ago in this new company, EasyStep2. And Maarten bringing in a lot of IT infrastructure knowledge, and they join hand on surely with getting things on cloud. They're making a good job on that. Before we get them to talk, let me go through some of the slides here before we start with the topic. Of course, some of the things might be known to some of you, but let's repeat that. If you want to watch this webinar, the recording, as it will be recorded today, you will find it on Mark's YouTube channel. You can always find the other ones too, so please make use of that. And of course, also if you want to give feedback through the comment boxes there. For today, of course, like with any webinar, if you have questions, use the question window. I will be moderating them. Might be that I'll answer you by typing an answer already if it's simple, but of course I will pose your question on your behalf to Rick and Maarten. I will jump in at the right time to pose the questions, so don't wait till the end, just feed your questions into this window and we will pick them up. And of course, a big thanks to our sponsor, Liberty Grove, which hosts us every time again with every webinar. And of course, a special thanks to Joe Mattis, who stepped in today to support us on the technical side. Thank you very much, Joe. Next webinar next week, there's some rescheduling here. Originally next week we would have a 101 series webinar number 7. This has been postponed till the end of August because of summer season and also because of the personal agenda of Dave. But we found Richard Robertson and Ron Koppelaar of CGK DSA in the Netherlands to talk about continuous integration, continuous delivery, and how to combine that or how to make it work for Dynamics NAV also. So if you haven't registered yet, please do. With any webinar, if you're not sure if there are webinars and what webinars there are, you can always go to our website, navskills.com/webinars. And of course, if you want to be informed on a, let's say, somewhat passive, but from our side more proactive way, you can subscribe to our newsletter. And just while I talk, if you haven't registered yet, type this URL. It's quite a challenge, of course, but you can find it on our recordings also. It's always on one of the slides. So welcome to the webinar of today. Welcome, Rick. Welcome, Maarten. And I will now give control to you two. So it's yours to present.
Hi everybody, this is Rick Blom. Can you see the screen? Can you see it, Luc?
I can see it, so no problem.
And I hope the other ones can see it as well. Well, good afternoon. My name is Rick Blom. Today we would like to take you through a little journey regarding the traditional NAV on-premise installations versus moving NAV to the cloud. What we will not do today is presenting Business Central, because that's another step forward, still work in process. What we will also give you a little view on cost of ownership versus flexibility versus scalability. What Luc also already introduces a little bit is that we have three expertises joining together at the 1st of January into a new company, where we joining Navision knowledge, in our case manufacturing knowledge, cloud knowledge, and connectivity knowledge into one new company. I keep it very short because you can always look us up on the internet. What we will do today is on the main components. What is the cost, benefits, return of investments, which is the question a lot of your customers or the customers who is joining in this meeting will ask you, what will it bring me, bringing NAV into the cloud? What are the benefits? What are the don'ts? What are the do's? So I'll give you a brief heads up on where we're heading. Luc was asking me in front of this meeting, how many customers are you having running in this scenario? At this moment, within a few months, we have now 5-6 customers moved into this scenario, scaling from 5 users to 50 users in all kinds of scenarios, 24/7 manufacturing plant versus warehousing versus a small trade company. So it's applicable for all these companies. What we take as an average for this whole session, and I know it will vary in each of the situations, but what we see here in the Netherlands is that we have an average of 20 users for the smaller business companies in the Netherlands. So what we set up is, and my colleague will bring you through in detail on this, is we have a setup on NAV on-premise with a perpetual, the traditional license, NAV on-premise with a subscription license, versus a full NAV on Azure subscription scenario. So I will give the word to my colleague Maarten, who will bring you in detail in all the pros and cons.
Hello, my name is Maarten Pauwels. Like Luc already said, I'm pulling the cables, so putting in the switches and everything before I went to work with Azure and put on the switches there. What we see here is the figures of the comparison between NAV on-premise and NAV on Azure. As maybe all of you already know, is that Azure is on subscription based, and that you pay per month or per hour or per second whenever you put things on or switch things off. So the comparison starts like you see with the initial costs. This is for setting up an environment. What we see in practice is when I went putting NAV on-premise, there are more costs involved than NAV on Azure, because setting up is more costs more hours than setting it up on Azure, because you also have to set up an Hyper-V server with operating systems on it. With NAV on Azure, it's only just a few clicks away, and then you have an OS running where you can put the NAV service tier on. What we see on the on-premise environment is that you normally have 2 servers, because what we said before, one server is no server in an IT environment, because when one is down, you cannot do anything, and you have to support it. You have to have the servers, have things running back on the server. To get everything keep on running for 99.9% or even higher. These initial costs are just the metal, the bare metal of the server now. And if you have 2 servers with a couple of cores, a couple of hard disk with SSD for the Microsoft SQL server, then you come around $9,000, 9,000 euros per server to connect it with the capable infrastructure that is also mentioned here. Also, you have to look at the OS licenses, which you have to buy immediately, or you can buy it with software assurance with the license in it. But if you buy it the standard one, it will be purchased for 2,500 euro, around that, for the 2 servers with these cores, because Windows Server 2016 is now sold per core, and you have to, at least for one server, you have to have 16 cores bought. Then you also have the user calls that you can connect the users to the server to store some files or whatever. You have to have the connection to it to buy the calls for the server. Then you also have the cost of course, the server room, the backup software, and the SQL Server runtime is also in the you can also buy from Microsoft with the NAV, but you can only use NAV to the SQL Server, and then it's the SQL Server NAV runtime, and otherwise the prices will go up extremely. There's one thing in this comparison that we have to look at, is that this is a standard license in the runtime. What the prices are here mentioned.
Maarten, if I may interfere, there was one question.
Yeah.
If you have those, let's say those 3 installations, if we take the left one, it's a full on-premise installation.
Yeah,
So
that's right.
And the middle one is that a Windows Azure hosted machine, or?
No, that's also a full installation on premise. But you can also buy the licenses for subscription, not on Azure, and then you still have to install servers and everything.
Okay, thank you.
With the SQL Server runtime, there is one thing. This is a standard edition, and if we compare it to Azure SQL, there is one real difference: is the uptime of the SQL Server. Because if you want to go to Enterprise, that's an always-on high availability plan, then the costs involved are much higher. So I put this in the place because this is what normally customers would do if they would run it on premise instead of in the cloud or a high availability environment. The left column, it also shows the NAV licenses in the first column for the licenses if you buy them. So this is the setup cost. That's why the NAV licenses aren't mentioned in the second column and in the third column.
Yep. So if we put these initial costs, we have the second scenario, which is the recurring costs, which is also yearly. We can do it on a monthly basis, but if you look at the yearly costs, then we have, of course, on the left again, on-premise, where we have maintenance, replacements, increasing memory disks. We have a continuous ICT maintenance, which is on a much higher level for the typical customers. What we see is that most smaller companies outsource these costs for a recurring fee per month, fixed fee, say 1,200, 1,300 euros per month, and we do all the ICT support for printing, everything, on logging on Windows, everything. But that cost also counts for your server environment for Navision. We also have to take into consideration the power consumption of the server, which is most of the time very underestimated.
The reason why this is underestimated, because if you have the power of the server, if you count it, most of the people count with that part. But the part also is that there is the part of air conditioning and so. So every power that you use by the server, you also have the power for the air conditioner that you have to count with it.
And of course, we have a software assurance agreement on the left column, which is the SA subscription for your operating system. So you have the ability to upgrade and receive the hot fixes and so on. And we have in the left column, of course, the standard NAV enhancement plan, which is bare Microsoft pricing, not the one you get from the partner or the partner is adding for their add-ons and all their adjustments and support. For the NAV on-premise subscription and on the NAV on Azure subscription, and later also for Business Central, of course, and Dynamics 365, all the enhancement plans are included in the price. That's a big difference. A lot of people don't know yet. So the prep is included, which means that on the second and the third column, these parts are zero. But of course, we have a recurring cost on Azure. So that's on the bottom part, where what we see, if you use Dynamics 365, you don't need a VM. But if you use NAV on Azure, we have a virtual machine. And that's in our case, because we do a lot in manufacturing companies. They have a lot of hybrid scenarios, which means a lot of connectivity to the factory itself and printing, labeling, things like that. So we do need a virtual machine where the service tier is running. So the yearly recurring cost is for that machine is put in place. And then in this scenario, we also take Azure SQL. So no dedicated SQL server, but the Azure SQL scenario, which was originally the reason for this webinar, which we had a small discussion on LinkedIn about performance and scalability, which we will address later. We have backup and recovery plan, which means, but Martin will tell you later about how can we restore backup and recovery on those servers. We have, again, ICT support. I think I see you have a little mistake because it's double. My excuses for that, because it's also included on the top. We have the Navision subscription, and we have the extended. I have split it up because we admit that not every customer needs the full extended license of Navision. You can see a price difference between the second column and the third column, and that's all because of the promotional pricing from Microsoft. If you run on Azure with Office 365, you get an additional discount. And as you can see, that's quite large.
These prices that we mention here are end user prices, what you calculated with some lower cost than the normal list prices. But this is what is the average.
What could you say about the dimensions of the Azure machines, the VM? Is there you've written it down, but you have different sizes, different types of?
Yeah, with the 20 user environment, we use an Azure D2 v3 connected to the Azure SQL. We have this in an availability set, but it will also come later on it when we see. I will
show the differences.
I will show the differences later.
Yeah. But what we did, and we can see that with different customers, and we share this information later on. But if we have a customer running 50 users, we have the same virtual machine running as a small user. And we can see that if you have two service tiers running, one for interfacing and scanning and job queues, these kind of things, and one service tier running for the users up to 50 users. Up to 50 users, we start scaling to an additional service tiers or additional machines. That depends a little bit on the scenario. Azure is just Azure in the cloud, and just connect to it, and you can scale there, which Martin will explain later.
Yeah, because we start already with when you have 20 users with a D2 version 3 with an availability set. The reason for that is because you are starting with monitoring, what I will explain later. So you can see what the customer really does because that's the difference between on-premise and on Azure, that you really monitor what it's doing, and then you scale down and scale up when it's needed. So that's why we start with this.
Yeah, roughly, I think it's between 2 or 4 cores, something between 14 and 16 gigabyte of memory, something like that.
Yeah,
roughly.
It's 4 cores and 16 gig of memory.
Yeah. So, well, if we put the 2 first sheets into, well, in Holland we have tax rules that we have to put an ROE of 5 years on this kind of investments. So we put those figures in, but I don't know if that's in the other countries as well. But if you can put all these figures together, you can see over a period of 5 years on pure NAV, which support all the costs involved, there's quite a difference. And of course, the cost on the left column can increase depending on the performance you need. But that's quite a gap to overcome over 5 years. And the reason how you can control this and how which steps to take in this is something Martin will explain. But I did some cross checks this morning on these figures, but with our 5-6 customers. And on the left column, we really are coming somewhere around these figures. Some a little bit higher and some a little bit lower, depending on their specific scenarios. I hope so far it's clear. This is pure on finance, so to give people a reason on a financial reason to start moving. And now we start moving slowly into the more technical reasons why you can start moving.
Okay, here is also what I said about the infrastructure you use. It's the NAV service tiers are on 2 servers in an availability set, so that you have an uptime of more than 99.95%. Behind this is an Azure SQL S2 database. In Azure, they use it with DTU. In the new way, there is also a preview of a vCore, what I will explain later. And then you also have a backup and or site recovery behind it. What we do with our environments is that we install everything with click once, so that customers can connect directly to the NST from the client. And this is bandwidth. The bandwidth should be good to the Azure cloud. Now, the Azure cloud itself, the bandwidth is okay. In the Netherlands, we don't have any issues, and in Belgium, we don't have either with our customers. But you can see that we can have the bandwidth. If you don't have enough bandwidth, then you have problems with can have problems with the click once. Here you see what I will explain is more about the Azure SQL, because that was the intentional question also about scaling. The VMs is also depending on how many NSTs you have, how many processors you have on it, what the customers are doing. So that will be very difficult. But what we see is that the scaling of the SQL can be that's the most important part of it. And Microsoft Azure has some plans for Azure SQL. It's a DTU model that's really completely pre-configured. So if you have the S2, you have 50 DTU, and that means that you have 2.5, yeah, maybe it's too technical to explain it, but you can scale up to S8 or even further, and they will explain the figures later on this. This is all pre-configured. It's very simple, and you don't have to maintain it. It's all completely done by Microsoft. Backup is done for 35 days. You can run it in point of time. I will show that later also. And also they have some really good tools that I will show you later also. Then now the new model is the vCore model. Then you combine different, you can buy more CPU, you can buy more memory, more IO, and the easy part of this, or the nice part of it, is that you can also use, if you also already have bought an SQL Server license, you can bring it into Azure and you get a 40% discount on the licenses or on the subscription. So it's more flexible and you can get more of the resources if you have add-ons that also need direct access to the SQL or on a different way. You can use this model, but you have to maintain more itself because backups are only done for 7 days, and there are more things to it that you have to maintain yourself. Now, here is the explanation of and the costs of a database. And what we do is really monitor what the customer needs. So you only buy what they need and they only pay what they need. So we start normally with the 20 user environment with the S2. Then you have 50 DTUs with a max storage of 250 gigabytes. And that is approximately the cost, about 62 euros. We have one customer that did grow and had a lot of things on. What were they doing?
Well, they have about 15 to 16,000 lot numbers posted on manufacturing every day on 24-hour, 7 days a week. And we encountered some locking with the S2 when they start reevaluating the cost prices in the factory, and two departments were not communicating with each other. So IT there asked us, what can we do? We increased to S4, and no locking, everything was running smoothly. They can run MRP runs on a live system without jeopardizing people posting entries in the system. And you can see there's a small difference in cost. Well, it's quite, some cost is 120 euros more per month.
180.
But the worries on performance were immediately gone. So you can see that moving from S2 to S4, we could also took S3. In the beginning, we even moved to S6, monitored, said, oh, that's not necessary, so we scaled back again. So you can, based on demand, you can scale up and down wherever you need. So if the people start re-evaluating their cost price at Christmas, run at Christmas in S4 and S6, and when everything is done, scale down to the S2 again, where everything is running smoothly. So that's the flexibility you can use with your customer.
And you can scale it up and down within a couple of minutes, it's done. So that's no problem. You can go from S1 to X6 or upwards and downwards.
You can't go from S3 and S2 when your database is larger than F250.
Yeah, that's right.
But that's a no-brainer.
Now, I will explain about something about because what I said about the NST, I think everybody knows how to get the NST up and running. It's not like a standard NST, and with performance tuning, there are some tools. If you want more information about this, you can send it to the contact. Send us a message through the contact page, and I will give you some tools also that maybe you can use to get the performance up and running on the NST. But now I will explain the Azure SQL. This is just a screen of how the Azure SQL looks, and you see that there are some troubleshooting tools or performance tools. There you can see the DTU usage, and there are some nice tools. The performance overview. This is the performance overview, what you see, and there you see performance and the recommendations, what should be done, and the DTU. You can click on that in the normal Azure. I will show you later on a database where you can do that. And there you have performance recommendations, or you can even look into the queries of the SQL. What I typically see is that this performance tuning isn't done on an on-premise environment, or you have to buy other tools, or you have to do scripting in SQL. And what I see typically in NAV environments, that it's not done or not done properly, and that they lose a lot of performance. So that's why these tools, they are free with Microsoft Azure at this moment. You never know, but they are free now, and you can use them, like even automatic tuning, so that you can use them themselves. I don't use it because I always want to know what is really happening on my database. That's why I don't use it. If you get really confident with it that automatic tuning is done right, then you can put this also on. This is what Azure does with this tool. It gives recommendations. And you see here that here is supposed that you create an index for this table. And this is also this is done on every table in NAV. And we did see a lot of recommendations on the customers we first started with. When they start using it, then you see on log tracking or other things that you should build indexes or recreate indexes. We really did see performance, the performance increasing with customers where we use this. That people were really complaining about, okay, when I look at that table, I have some problems. It takes me 1 or 2 minutes. We put in these indexes that were recommended from Azure, and then afterwards it was put on screen within 10-15 seconds or so.
And of course, as an Navision guy, I also say, looking at the indexes, it gives me some pointers where in the code, in CIL, I do something wrong. Or if I should add that index, or should actually remove that index in code, or things like that. And it was a few weeks ago, I spoke with Mark Brummel. He said, actually, Microsoft should add a key object. And I totally agree with him. Using this functionality, being able to add key objects, that will be a tremendous improvement. So that's something we should advise Microsoft in.
Okay, then we have also another tool that is included. That's query and performance insight. There you can see the queries that are running at the moment on CPU, data IO, log IO, what they are consuming on the DTUs. Now this is a real environment that we use for 20 users. And as you see, this is done during this day. They are completely operational at this moment. And you see it's not, the performance is more than enough because, yeah, you see,
well, when this is our Belgium customer, I think they're not working today due to the World Championships. But
yeah, that could be a possibility.
But that's a normal trend we see. It's never coming above 10% unless they are running very big, stupid queries. And then we also receive an alert on our mobile phones or on our monitoring tools here in the office, so we can see, hey, and we call them and say, are you running an MRP run? And they're very surprised to say, hey, how do you know? Well, we can see it. So you're on top of these scenarios with our customers. We can help them. We can see queries. If it's our add-on related, we can improve our add-on on performance. So it's I'm very happy with this.
Rick, is this the resolution on this one? Do you have some idea? I mean, what kind of spikes will show or don't show here?
These are the this is the most I/O consuming queries that are showing. When we look at the page further, you see also the long running queries. And there you can see this is a customer that have put on MRP last week. And there you can see the two spikes that are two long run queries because they are running an MRP one for 3 months in the whole company that is doing 300 million of production items a year. So that's why they have the spike of long run queries. Every I/O, you can zoom into it.
And scale it, yeah.
And then see the recommendations.
Yeah. You can see, you can zoom in if the scale is not satisfactory.
Yeah, and also when you click on, yeah, this is just a PowerPoint presentation, but if you go over the, I will show you later in the live part, if you go over it, you see the details exactly of that running query.
Looks like they're using Power BI or something.
And you can even create your own custom things that you want to look at, what are already the performance issues you always have with your add-on, and put even alerts on it that you get a message, okay, when this is running at 70% or 80% of the DTU, I want to get a message. Now I go to the live part of Azure. Here I have a database where you also see this resource health and performance overview. Yeah, this is a database where it isn't running at this moment anything, so you don't see any thing going on here, but you see I can go through it, run through it, and it shows the real percentage that is in there. And it's also done here. And here you see, okay, you can go to CPU, data I/O, and log I/O. There you see the top 5 queries with performance. You can even,
due to European regulations, we're not allowed to show real live databases of our customers. So sorry for that.
Like I said, here is the long running queries. Here you see, okay, this is 80 milliseconds. That's the yellow one. You can zoom into this one. And you see all the detail. If it's showing up, yeah. You see all the detail of which table it is, which query it is. And this you can use also for your NAV environment for the programming.
So when Martin gets these alerts, he calls me, say, hey, Rick, I have a very long running query and it's pointing to you. So then I have to start working again.
There are other parts that I want to show is, yeah, the alerts here are the classic alerts. With automation, you can also do other alerts that you can send to other help desk software or whatever you like. Also, we have a part that's the automatic tuning, where you see, okay, create an index. It will create automatically the index on the database if you want that. Otherwise, let me see if I can. Yeah, here you don't see any recommendations, but normally when you click on recommendations, you see here to create the index what you did see before. Now, also, what I did mention is about backups. it's completely done for you by Microsoft with the DTU databases. So when you want to recover something, you can recover it any point in time. Here is also the notifications. Here also show up the recommendations if they are done by Microsoft. But the backup, here you can restore any point in time or copy a database, delete it of course, but
No.
that's the worst case. No, but then even the backup is there. And here is the restore part. You can see I can select any point in time, say, okay, this is the database name. It will restore it next to the original database. The target server, that's the same server as the other database is on, and what kind of pricing tier you wanted to put in. If for restoring reasons or something, you can first say, okay, I want to restore it in S4 so that it's more faster and that we can use it immediately again. That's also a performance issue. But here I can select which day I want to go back. Okay, we did a delete of some tables.
The customer did a delete of some tables.
Tables. Okay, the customer. The customer did a delete of some tables last Wednesday, so I want to go back to the backup of Tuesday at 2:35 because then I know exactly that it was okay.
You can also use this, of course, for automatically creating test databases for customers. Every day there's a new database, removing the old one. So you have always live data, and put your add-ons or extensions in, and start testing and move on, and then push it to the live system. So you can easily create all kinds of sandboxes against a very low cost without buying very expensive backup scenarios with disk storage, everything.
What is the speed of this restore? Is it comparable to on-prem, or is it faster anyway?
Yeah, it's we didn't have to do many restores.
No, we did one lately for my upgrades.
Yeah,
that was a very big database. It was in 5-6 minutes. It was restored.
Yeah,
I could access it.
So depends also in which pricing tier you put it back in, because that's why I say also if you put in a higher pricing tier, it will restore it faster.
And making a backup is like we did a few weeks ago. We did an upgrade on NAV on Azure to a new cumulative update. Before we do that, we just explicitly create another backup. And that backup is made in 1-2 minutes max, and it's quite a big database already. It's 200-300 gig, and it was very fast. And then I could start rolling up, putting in all the cumulative updates, and have this backup fallback scenario if everything went wrong. So it's very flexible, very easy, and if everything is running, oh yeah, well, you remove that backup again. Of that database again.
You also see here what I didn't mention before, but what I still want to mention is that you can also select an Elastic database. An Elastic database pool is a pool of DTUs. So you buy, say, 100 DTU or 200 DTU. That depends on the pricing tier, and you can put more databases in it.
Sort of like time sharing.
Yeah. So if you say, okay, what you see a lot of people say, okay, but I still want a test environment, but the test environment is used maybe 2-3 hours a week, and then you will also want to use the performance normally. What you do on premise is from the database. If you're not using it, then it's only standing there and not using any CPU or whatever. With this Elastic pool, you can use this. In the Elastic pool, you create a database, and it will consume up to the specific DTU you purchase, and so the production environment will use, if you don't use the other databases, will use the complete DTU if you have any performance issues or whatever. So you're more flexible to use it with different databases, because otherwise the cost will involve, if you have 10 or 15 databases and you use your own databases very rare, then you better can use the elastic database pool.
You can think here of ideal Microsoft promoted scenario. I think they do it themselves as well. They you have several a pool of virtual machines, and they are running service tiers in a multi-tenant environment, and they're all connecting to Azure SQL databases running in a pool. So so all the performance as a partner is shared among all your customers. You only have one problem, is if they all run the MRP run on the same time, and you exceed the maximum cumulative performance of that pool. But then you need to increase your performance of the pool. But that could save you a lot of cost, because the figures you saw in the beginning are only figures for dedicated customer scenarios without pooling.
Yeah, and if you have, after half a year or a year, you see, okay, this customer, you can run scripts on it and see what the customer is really doing, and then you can also see which pricing tier they need. There are several scripts also to find them, an MSDN that you can use for this.
So that's not standard tooling in this control panel.
Yeah, you can use it with the automation tool, but then you have to put the script in it, and you can use it here, and then then you can get this performance, but it's not standard in this tooling now. You have to configure it. That's how I have to say it.
But to compare what we're using at one of our bigger customers, 50 users, 10 limited scanning users, we have some job queues running, the total cost of the machines are running on an Azure SQL S4, and they're running on a small VM with 2 service tiers, and we have no performance issues whatsoever. And this customer is running 24/7 without downtime. We had a downtime of how much the last 2 years?
Half an hour or so.
Half an hour.
Here, Morten Nielsen, one of the attendees, also put some of his experience here. He writes, we have been running it for a while, 100 DTU, 50 DTU max per database. The only situation which spikes is when companies are copied with enough. That's his experience.
Exactly. Yeah. But that's
right.
In the new updates. We can see that improving in the latest updates, because we had the same issue. And in the beginning, where Azure was quite changing and Azure SQL was quite in involvement, we had quite some contact with Microsoft. We get timeouts when copying companies or restoring backpacks, exporting and importing one of those data packages. We get timeouts, but we can see, at least in the last year, 3/4 of a year, that incredibly increased, and we could just restore those companies without very big issues. But he's right. Copy a company is locking the complete object range in NAV. That should be as fast as possible. So what we do normally, when we know we have to do this during the day for some kind of reason, we first increase to S6, copy the database, then it's done in 5-6 minutes, and then decrease the Azure SQL back to what it was. And we have done this. Yeah.
What did you mean then, Rick, with the fix from Microsoft?
Well, we can see that that every cumulative updates, or also on the Azure side, things are improving quite fast on a monthly basis. The last 2-3 months, I think, is quite stable, because. Yeah. But before that, we can solve this kind of scenarios, timeout, things like that. But no problems whatsoever anymore.
2 years ago, when we started with this, we saw with NAV 2016 it was still. We had some issues that the memory caching of Azure SQL was a problem, and with the bulk inserts and everything with NAV, then you really had a problem. But they spoke to each other, and the Azure team and the NAV team, and that is really improved. Now we don't have those issues anymore.
No, and like we said, if you have this kind of scenarios, just first increase the Azure SQL to a higher performance level. Do your task. When your task is finished, downgrade again to the original price tier. We did that with companies with a lot of data. Well, we had this company copy within 5 minutes, and upscaling and downscaling was within a minute. So total 7 minutes. We have this a big company copied, or restoring a backpack, or things like that. And then the costs are very, like Martin said in the beginning, these pricing tiers are calculated per minute or per second or per week or per day. So you, on the cost side, on our side, it's just when we need the performance, we scale up. When we don't need the performance, we scale down. And keeping control of the cost and have a happy customer experience on the other side. And it's easy. You can automate this. If the peak spikes up to a certain percentage, upscale. If it peaks down, downscale.
Yeah, so that's automatable. So you don't need to.
Yeah, you can do this quite easy. Yeah.
I mean, if you're going to copy a company or restoring a backup, that's what you know at the moment. We need some more force or some more power.
You have a PowerShell script. You can have your Azure PowerShell script saying increase your price tier.
Yeah.
And then have your PowerShell script on NAV, copy my company to a new company or a new database, or even so, I don't care. And then when that's done and finished, downscale through PowerShell your price scale again.
But is it also automatable in the sense of if for example, for whatever reason your MRP run needs more power, that it automatically scales up to another tier?
Quite well on the rules. We have some tests with that. You can say if it peaks on 80%, scale up. But because you're scaling up, it peaks below 80%. So you can say, okay, what's the average time an MRP run should run? So when it scales up, it should at least run for 1 or 2 hours, and then scale down again when it's below a certain percentage, something like that. Else, you have to think quite well on that scenarios, but you can also say scale up and give an alert to the administrator and to us in this case. And the next morning we can check if everything is okay and scale down again. But then it runs a little bit longer in the high pricing model.
Of course.
But we can think smart of that. It's quite flexible there. But to be honest, we rarely need it. Only when you see end user errors on the end. Running an MRP run over a full year. Oh, I'm going on holiday. Let's run it for a full year, and it blocks the whole factory. Things like that. And then, yeah, okay, but we can scale up to improve the speed a bit, and then within an hour we have a check and then scale down again. But that's something you receive on the help desk anyway. Oh, it's locking. So.
Hey guys, you moved to your last slide, I guess. Yeah. I got a couple of questions.
No problem.
First question is with this cost table you had at the start. Of course, on the Azure side, the cost might depend on a change in storage size and transactional charges. So what did you take as an average here? I mean, if there is more data coming in, on the Azure side, you can have a higher amount of transactional cost.
Yeah, the transactional cost, but that's also then you almost all of the time have to scale up to another pricing tier also. That's really customer dependable.
Data storage is minimum.
Yeah, data storage is minimum when you look at the VM or the SQL. That understand that. You also have the data cost, of course, but it's really bare minimum if you look at it.
Yeah, so there's not a big change in this figure which you put on the screen here.
Buying a terabyte is quite easy, and I know a few Navision databases bigger than a terabytes, but I think on average with 20 user environments, you should do a very good job getting it above 1 terabyte, or it's a long-running customer for several years. I understand that, but then the cost is quite acceptable on additional data storage. It's a few, say 5 or 10 euros per month per user, or something like that. It's
for the 20 user environment, yeah.
There was another question from Ian Wilson. Or Ian, I don't know, I always make a mistake, I guess, here. Ian or Ian Wilson. If you want to connect to your Azure VM, do you need to use a VPN for that, a VPN connection?
No.
From your premises to the Azure machine, it's not needed.
No, I use the click once installation. What you should need to do is look at the security. That's very important. You need to have a network security group connected to it, put it on the IP address, or what we do with customers, we also have it connected to Azure Active Directory, that the users log in through that with multi-factor authentication or whatever. You should use that, but you don't need a VPN for that. But you can still use a VPN if you want that, because I also have customers that have a hybrid environment. They first use the NAV on-prem, and then first moved the replication to the cloud with site recovery, and then they move completely to Azure, and they already had the VPN to Azure, and you can also use it then. It's no problem.
But the normal customers running with click once, running through SSL. Yeah. So the secure channels still for Navision. We have a scanning app and shop floor app, which does exactly the same, connecting to the web API of NAV through SSL using Office Microsoft single sign-on. So it's quite secure. And when they do this outside the factory, they have to have two-level authentication.
Yeah, multi-factor authentication.
So they receive a PIN code on their mobile, which they have to type in before they can connect.
Okay, we're getting almost to the hour. Couple of other questions. One from Ludo van der Ende. He says, by the way, a compliment to you, nice presentation. What's the average of the size of your customer? If you
above 20 up to 50, 70 users.
Yeah, you have some smaller ones from 5 to 70 users.
Yeah.
But and then database size wise?
Around, I have one customer with a database of 110 gig and below that.
Okay, yeah. Clear. Thank you.
I have a few from the past which are bigger, but I can see the same results there. No problem.
Yeah. Then another, probably last question from Rajesh Asar. If the client has already bought NAV perpetual license on premise to overcome the existing cost of maintainability and scalability, is there a possibility to migrate the infrastructure network on Azure?
Yeah, what you see, if they bought already the licenses, also for the VMs and the OS and everything, you can get a discount on the VMs for 40%, but also on the SQL for 40%. For the NAV, I don't know at this moment if there are any.
No, there are some promotional actions for Dynamics 365 and Business Central, but that I think is still work in process, and I think we'll learn more from that in October on directions. So I know there are some plans in moving your customers to the cloud. You can get some refund or additional percentages of discounts for the NAV perpetual licenses. But like I said, subscription, you can, all our new customers, I push them immediately into subscription. Because already moving into the recurring model it's very good as a company from our side to move into the uninhabitable way of NAV on Azure and Business Central that you have to pay per month. So moving into this famous cash flow issue, you have to make sure every new customer moves into subscription already, even if it's on subscription, on premise. That's my advice.
Last part for Rajesh, he said, well, can you migrate your license into a subscription, or is it just, does it feel like you're actually changing from an on-premise license into a subscription, or do you lose a lot of money on that?
No. Well, that's two things, and I have to talk to Guus from QBS about this because he's training a lot of partners on this in the road to repeatability. But to be honest, if the customers pay on time, it's no issue. And we really, it's a better way of getting your money in a more spreaded way in. But what you had in the past with on-premise is that when the customer didn't pay his licenses up front, you didn't start with the implementation of the project. But if your customers are back on their payments on subscription and they're running on their financial systems, you just can't pull, you just can't pull their systems, or you can shut down their systems. So there's really some legal and contractual issues, and having the stick in your hands in making sure your customers are paying on time. And that's something we see is a higher risk compared to paying upfront all the licenses on a perpetual module.
Okay, guys, we're just beyond the hour. We're going to stop. Thank you all for being here, and Rick and Maarten, special thanks to you, of course, for having us share this story with us. Well, hope to meet you next week with the continuous integration, continuous development, and have a good day for the rest of the day to you all. Bye for now.
Bye.
Bye.